What's up, everybody? Welcome to Recap with Radical as we cover stories that we didn't get to from episode 168 of the Pixel Play podcast, which dropped September 18th of 2024. As always, I'm Adam, aka CS Radical here. Got a few stories that we didn't get to because, well, there were some more important things at the time. We really just wanted to take another shot at Sony for saying something stupid because we did talk about the fact that, well, they actually have a lot more original IP than they seem to claim. But if you want to watch that, obviously, you can check out episode 168, whether it's on anywhere you get your audio versions of podcast or on YouTube. But we have some stories to get into this week. I do want to quickly note here, I am recording this on the 20th. I am going to be talking about Palworld, but it's not going to have anything to do with the lawsuit that Nintendo is filing against the company that produced the game. That is something that we're probably going to cover either on the main episode next week or on the side quest. I really don't see another story coming up that's going to kind of top that, or at least two of them. I am talking about a different story related to them that came out before this story came out, because anything that I do take here is from before the episode had dropped. So anything that happened in the last couple of days, I'm not getting to because it's not quite that time period yet. But just wanted to drop that in there before you guys start thinking as I start talking about Palworld, well, hey, why is he not talking about the lawsuit? That's because technically it hasn't happened yet in the line of dates that I am pulling from here. But anyways, let's hop right into our first story. So we are kicking off with a story that hopefully doesn't change a lot, but potentially could, and something that I won't be too happy about. So Annapurna Interactive, basically, their entire gaming division has resigned. So this comes from IGN. They confirmed, based on conversations with their own sources, that Annapurna Interactive president Nathan Gary had recently been in negotiations with founder and billionaire Megan Ellison to spin the gaming segment off as its own company. However, Ellison eventually pulled out of negotiations, at which point he resigned, along with about 30 other individuals, including division co-heads Deborah Mars and Nathan Vella, as well as the entire remaining staff of Annapurna. So while negotiations are still ongoing, Annapurna announced that it had rehired former Epic Games executive Hector Sanchez as its president of Interactive and New Media, and Paul Doyle as its head of strategy. They also understand that Sanchez was expected to head up Annapurna's gaming efforts in Gary's absence once his part of the company was spun off, but now with Gary having resigned, Sanchez is now taking the lead. Our top priority is to continue supporting our developer and publishing partners during this transition, Megan Ellison had told Bloomberg, saying that they are committed to not only our existing slate of games, but also expanding our presence in the interactive space as we continue to look for opportunities to take a more integrated approach to linear and interactive storytelling across film, TV, gaming, and theater. So for those who are unaware, Annapurna is a publisher, essentially, and they have been, quite frankly, one of the best to do it in terms of finding indie gems that have been phenomenal games. Many games that I have played, many games I still need to play. A few of the biggest ones that come to mind recently: Cocoon, Stray, Neon White, as well as The Artful Escape and Sayonara Wild Hearts. The Artful Escape, which I can say is still, to this day, one of my favorite indie games of all time, and one of the few times where, as a guy who really doesn't care much for art, in the physical sense, like, to me, going to a museum and staring at paintings doesn't really do anything for me. But for what is considered art in gaming, The Artful Escape is one of the few that I'm like, no, this is worth every bit of critical acclaim it's ever gotten. Along with that, there are some games that were currently in production to be published by them, and apparently is going to be unaffected. Games being like Control 2, Wanderstop, and Mixtape. Mixtape, which is a big one for me. I was very relieved to hear that nothing's going to change with that. But this is a story that I'm kind of unsure on how to react to, because you assume that they're still going to do what they're doing, but now with different voices in there, are they going to pull the same kind of indie games? Are they going to go in a different direction? And that's where I think my concern comes in. Whenever I've seen Annapurna on something, I know it's either going to be really good or really good to people that don't share my tastes. It's going to be very, very high quality for a specific niche of gamers. And anytime that I have played something from Annapurna that has clicked with me, it's always been top tier. One of the exceptions is Stray. Stray was just one of those games that I felt like didn't click, but obviously a lot of people love that game. So while my opinion on every single game they release may not be the same, whenever something does click to keep me to finish a game with Annapurna's name on it, it's never like mid or like just mid to like mid high tier. It's always top. It's always great. So I'm a little nervous, admittedly, with what's going on over there now with new voices, new minds taking a look at things. But this is something that we won't really know the answer to for a few more years, because obviously a lot of games are already still contracted to be published by Annapurna at this time. Like I said, Control 2, Wander Stop Mixtape. Those are some of the few. I haven't seen like a full list, and maybe there is one available, I just haven't come across it, of like what games are currently in production that is to be published by them. But I mean, given what they've got so far, they've got a good, run to go for a couple more years now, and then we'll really see how things change by the time the decade gets closer and closer to its end. I will say, though, I'm a little disappointed by this, because given how well Annapurna has done under the leadership that it had been under at that time under Nathan Gary and the other division co-heads of Deborah Mars and Nathan Vella, to make that change, I understand that they wanted to go on their own, but like there had to be some sort of a compromise here. But it seems like, again, billionaires got to be billionaires, millionaires got to be millionaires. Egos are always going to clash. I don't really know who's in the right here at this time. It's really just a matter of we'll wait and see. Like, what happens? Will Nathan Gary end up doing something on his own and pull something, and maybe it'll be a different setup there? Like, we won't really know for a little while. But as I was gutted by that announcement, just because of how many amazing games have come out of them, and I hope that nothing changes. But I can't help but feel a little bit concerned, a little bit worried. But I want you guys to tell me in the comments below, what do you think? Do you think Annapurna, will still stay the course, or is this development going to kind of put a negative change on things? But let me know, because they just can't keep out of the news and negatives. No, this isn't a Sony story as much as I'd like it to be sometimes, but Microsoft right back at it again with another set of layoffs, as they're going to lay off 650 more staff. So again, from IGN, this came out. Phil Spencer said that the roles are going to affect mostly corporate and support functions and were made to organize their business for long-term success. He did clarify that no games, devices, or experiences are being canceled. No studios are being closed as a part of these cuts. But these latest layoffs means that Microsoft has now let go about 2,550 staff from its gaming business since acquiring Activision Blizzard for $69 billion in 2023. In his memo as well, Spencer did make it clear that the cuts were related to the acquisition. Now, these cuts were following an already just destructive 1,900 layoffs that Microsoft had made to its business earlier this year, and continuing the industry's honestly like just ridiculous trend of just constant closures and layoffs. Microsoft, among that 1,900 layoffs, they closed Hi-Fi Rush developer Tango Gameworks, which we were not quiet about at all on the show when we talked about that, but also Redfall developer Arcane Austin as part of those cuts, which we were also not quiet about, but for different reasons. PUBG publisher Krafton later picked up Tango Gameworks, saving around half of that 100-team staff. Now, this is also a reminder and kind of showing just how pathetically either incompetent or useless the FTC is now in the States. When the Activision Blizzard was under severe scrutiny by the FTC for obvious reasons, because, I don't know, I guess we shouldn't just allow 5 companies essentially own everything, Microsoft did promise that there wouldn't be mass layoffs incurred because of this merger with Activision Blizzard. And here we stand with over 2,500 layoffs, less than a full year from this merger being completed. So I asked the question, what are we going to do about that? Because I feel like at this point, something needs to be said by the FTC. Now, as a consumer, I've already done my part. I have not bothered with a Game Pass subscription for a little while now. I don't intend to ever buy anything on their platform until further notice, and it continues to keep this going. Now, Game Pass is one of those things where if there is enough things out there that I do have an interest in playing, I can pop in a month and be gone again. it's not that difficult to do. So I don't feel like giving them as much money as possible. In the same vein that, like, look, I know Disney is a real jackass when it comes to the way that they run their stuff, but look, when a Marvel movie comes into theaters, I know it's going to be fun. I pay my few bits of dollars for that, but I don't get a Disney Plus subscription, so I try my best to navigate around it in the same way that, like, look, Amazon, it's really hard not to purchase things from Amazon. I just try to limit what I can. At the end of the day, I don't make a crap ton of money that I can just make a choice exactly where I'm going to buy things, and no matter what the cost is. You got to do the best that you can. But on the flip side, it's not my job to hold a company to the fire when they make a promise in order to have the government allow them to buy a company for $69 billion. That was a very obvious attempt at keeping the market closer to their side of things and taking more control of that. In the same way that when Sony bought Bungie, and if they do anything else after this, we've been talking many times about, the potential of them buying Square or something like that. We're not doing it because we want them to take over stuff. We're doing it because, well, we don't want one company to own it. So if it's going to be this race, we'd rather it be several companies doing this rather than one. But personally, I'd rather none of them do that. But obviously, we live in a society, in an economy where, well, who has the most money seems to just basically be allowed to do whatever they want without recompense. And it's something that's going to continue to happen until further notice. And I don't know if that's ever really going to change until, quite frankly, we're completely gone off this planet, entirely. But in regards to this, like, it's another case of why are jobs being needlessly cut? These companies, every single time, will talk about record profits. Every single time, we'll talk about stock prices going up. Because the only thing that fucking matters is the shareholders in these situations. No one gives a shit about the people that actually need this fucking money to survive. It's about the millionaires and billionaires who are just looking for their yacht spending money for the year. Every time that these layoffs happen, I have to give at least 2 middle fingers. I wish I had more to give, but 2 middle fingers to every person making 7 digits or more that put money into these companies and expect a return. Guys, stock trading is a fucking gamble. You shouldn't get automatically a profit. It is a risk. So every time that you see shareholders cry foul because a company isn't delivering, that's your fucking problem for making that gamble. It's no different than if you guess the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. It's no different if you guess Austin Matthews is going to score 60 goals this year. It is a gamble, and you should not be rewarded for bitching about losing at a gamble. So until further notice, Microsoft, once more, fuck you. And I hope that these people are able to find work quickly and get back to the quality of life that they deserve, because they don't deserve losing their jobs because, quite frankly, a company isn't making the money that they projected to make. That is the operative term, projected, not the profit that they made, what they projected to make. Because make no mistake, Microsoft is making money, and if they tell you otherwise, it is very easy to fuck with numbers to make it look like you aren't. It is easy to bury it. It is easy to hide it. The reality is they are always making money, but it is about shareholders getting their profits. It is about CEOs getting their bonuses, and it is about the stock price going up. It is never about anything beyond that. It has nothing else to do with it other than those 3 things, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to you. So Microsoft, this is going to be the last time, right? But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Is this the end of it, or is it just the beginning of another train? And quite frankly, what are your thoughts on these mergers to begin with and how all of these companies are handling it? Let us know everything you think in the comments below on this one. So here we are. We're talking about Palworld. I did mention that we aren't talking about the lawsuit, but just so you guys know, Nintendo is suing them, finally. I'm surprised it made it this long, but that's going to happen. But that is something we will cover at another time. What I do want to talk about is that the company did come out and discuss what their business model was going to say. Essentially, that they are not changing anything. They said that they will not be changing their game's business model. It's going to stay buy to play. It's not going to turn free to play or to a game as a service. They recently published a article about their future direction for Palworld and ideas for continuing the game for a long time, and here is verbatim what they had said. This isn't the full bit, but these are a few paragraphs that I pulled here. In fact, this interview was conducted several months ago. At this time, we were still considering the best way forward for Palworld to create a long-lasting game that continues to grow. We are still discussing this internally, and it isn't quite challenging to find the ideal path, but we have already decided that free-to-play, game-as-a-service approach is not suitable for us. Palworld was never designed with that model in mind, and it will require too much work to adapt the game at this point. Additionally, we are very aware that this just isn't what our players want, and we always put our players first. We are still considering skins and DLC for Palworld in future as a means to support development, but we will discuss this with you all again as we get closer to that point. For now, our priority remains making Palworld the best game possible. Now, keep in mind, this is still early, and now with the lawsuit, you never know how things might change when money becomes a little more of a concern. But at this time, when I did see the story, I was very happy to see that. I have not played Palworld at this time. I don't really have an intent to. It didn't really interest me, especially when I saw the slower like crafting mechanics that it has there. I've never really jived with those games, but I do see why a lot of people like it. What I do appreciate, at least at this time, is that they're not going to stray from the path that they initially planned on. A lot of games will immediately turn face the second that the money goes away. It's why, as a Helldivers player, we always worry about what's going to happen once the hype dies down. And now we're in the stage where it seems like they're still progressing in a good direction. You look at a game like No Man's Sky about how it completely changed how it was over time. Cyberpunk, a similar story as well for different reasons. And I do always appreciate it when a game, at least at the moment that it's saying this, is talking that it's not going to go to the approach that a lot of games have suffered from and have always fallen because of. Because make no mistake, most free-to-play games do not last very long. Most game-as-a-service games do not last very long. The concept is not enough. And let's be real here, like Palworld is essentially a Pokemon concept. And I don't believe that even this would be enough to save it. It would still do what a lot of these games do. It would barely survive because there would be always those couple of people that just spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, which, by the way, again, guys, I don't have to tell this to you. You don't need to spend more than $200 on a game ever at any point. I can understand supporting them with skins and a few, extra, luxury items. But the second you get to that $150 range, if you're not counting like getting a special edition of something, if you've bought the game at launch at its normal price and you're now past $150, you really have to stop and ask yourself, like, what's going on here? Now, you can say that you're doing this because you really enjoy this and this is what you want to support. But like, I play MLB The Show, for example. I will never to this day understand people who spend the kind of money that they do on the packs to get cards. And this goes for FIFA, Madden, NHL, all that. And I know people have said, well, obviously, I can't get all of these and I want to collect it all. To which I go, yeah, but what are you collecting? You're collecting digital things that will go away when the servers are down. I could understand this if you were trying to collect Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon cards, trading cards for like sports, baseball cards, hockey cards. Like I could understand all that because there's a physical thing to it. And if you want to get rid of them, there's value to come back to you. But when MLB The Show 24 is no longer really being played, you can't sell all the cards, all the players that you have collected. I have every single card. I've got that for free. I did it by playing the market. I did it by anytime that I listen to a podcast and such like that. If I have the ability to do something that is mindless, I would just turn on the market and just play with it. And I'd make like 100,000 stubs just over time. And it's now at a point where I have way more than I could ever need. And it's to a point now where I don't need to do that. And granted, it was a lot of time to do it, but that's what I decided I wanted to do with the certain bits of time that I had for certain things. Whereas there were other times where I went, no, I'm going to play this game. I don't give a shit about the market at this point. And eventually it just worked out that way for me. But like, if you don't have the kind of time to play these kind of games, you don't have to spend money on it either. Like at some point you have to come to a decision to go, well, how much do I want to get out of this? I could understand if you want to get like a little bit here and there, but given the way that they price these things, it's meant to predatorize you guys. It's meant to make you spend stupid amounts of money on, quite frankly, nothing. Because that's what they are. They are worth nothing. They can say they're worth X amount of in-game currency, but at the end of the day, they are worth 0 because you cannot sell them afterwards. So when it comes to those things, now it's a different story when it's skins and DLC. If you're the guy that's buying, currency so you can buy costumes in Destiny or buying expansion packs and stuff, different story. You're supporting new content that you're going to be able to add on to. But in the case of a lot of other things that game as a service does, or things like that free-to-play do, where it's very predatory and is intentionally meant, like with gacha mechanics and such, for example, it's always things that carry 0 value to you in the end. So keep in mind that you don't have to give these companies hundreds of dollars. You can play the game, spend a little bit if you want to support them, and then that's it. Don't give them that much money, especially if you don't have it, which is another thing too. But going back to Palworld, I love the fact that they are going out there and saying, no, we're not doing that. We are going to stick to what's working for us, and we don't feel like there's any need to change that. We'll see how that changes now that the lawsuit's coming out. And like I said, we will very likely be talking about that on either the main show or the side quest. So keep in views for us for that. I don't know what word I was trying to find there. It is a Friday, so my brain is fried here. You get it? Because it's Friday. I'm fried. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Do you think it's a good decision that Palworld is not changing anything? Do you think the current approach that they have is going to keep them alive? And, well, hey, if you want to talk about the lawsuit, we ain't going to stop you. Go put that in the comments below as well and let us know what you think about that. And last but not least, my personal story that I always have to throw in there, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 is apparently not going to betray the fans of the original, but there will be elements that bring a new happiness, whatever the fuck that means. I'll try to keep my cool as I say the initial stuff. So this came from Games Radar that I took this article from. Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth producer Yoshinori Kitase said that the upcoming third entry in the trilogy will stay true to the story told in the 1997 JRPG classic, but given how much time has passed, there will also be plenty of new stuff as well. We do hear a lot of players' different conjectures saying, oh, how much will this story change from the original? And I do want to comment that I don't think that's how it will be, Kitase said. We've always kept the original in mind, and I don't think that it's going to be a storyline that will betray the fans of the original. But also at the same time, it's been 27 years since the original release of the original Final Fantasy VII. There are these things that we feel can only... there are these things that we feel we can only do now in the remake project that can bring a new happiness, a new sort of feeling of satisfaction to the players playing this game now 27 years later. What this will entail exactly is something we hope players will experience soon. And in addition, as for a release date, they have yet to announce it, although in April, Kitase did say that it's possible that it'll be finished in 3 years because the dev team hasn't been split up as of yet. So I have made it very clear on the podcast before that I'm very disappointed in Rebirth, not because it's a bad game. I will say this though, if it wins Game of the Year, I think it's one of the most undeserved Game of the Years for a while. I know a lot of people are saying that it deserves it, but I don't think it does because it's a great game. I think it might just deserve it because the pack this year is kind of weak. But quite frankly, I will die on this hill. There is no reason that Final Fantasy VII should be any higher than an 8 out of 10 because the open world elements are so fucking boring that it doesn't deserve remotely close to a 9, if especially not a 10. That game, I've played every bit of that open world. I finished every marker on that map. 90% of it was not needed. All you could have really had was the summoning mini stuff where it gets you towards the eventual secret boss at the end, which I won't spoil because the game is still relatively new. But other than that, apart from a few games and activities, it's not that interesting. What, you want to go and basically do radio towers again? Do you really want to go and track something that really doesn't lead to anything of interest? None of that really happens, and it's kind of disappointing. So I don't really have a high opinion of Rebirth, and the other reason for that is also because, quite frankly, I think the story decided to go too far back to the original that I thought it was a cop-out. Because what I liked about the first game was that it felt different completely. And I know a lot of people didn't like this, and I understand that, but I have the argument that I've always made. It's guys, if you want to play the original story still exists. What was making 7 Remake so interesting to me was that it wasn't the original. In the same way that every time a new retelling of a comic book story gets done, I'm always interested in it. Whether it ends up being good or not is a different story. But like, I'm always interested when they try to do something different with something that's already been established. Because to me, it's boring to just play the exact same thing again because the emotion isn't there anymore. Like, let's be honest, guys. If the literal Aerith death played back the exact same way in the remake, would you really have felt that interested about it? You probably would have felt slightly more, just because Aerith, in my opinion, has been done a way lot better than in the original, but you still know it's happening. The difference between what happened between the original and what happened in Rebirth, again, without spoiling it necessarily, was that I spent almost an hour after the moment going, what happened? Did this happen, or did this happen, or is I don't know what's happening here, and I still don't really know. But what I do know is they clearly didn't go the route that I wanted, which was them to change completely from what happened. Whether that means Aerith survives, whether that means someone else dies, they haven't quite changed that. And I don't think that's a spoiler to say, really, that, like, because they're keeping the original, that moment is still relatively intact. I can't say specifically why, but I think most people kind of understood going in that she was probably still going to die the same way in the same place, and it's just a matter of how are they kind of putting a new spin on it. And to be frank, the way that they did it, I don't like. So when I see comments like this saying that, again, they won't betray the fans of the original, I do want to say, I kind of want to just say fuck the fans of the original, because quite frankly, you guys were going to like it no matter what. And as far as I'm concerned, the original I don't think is very good. So the original, like, I know it's a hot take. I do think a lot of the reason that the original gets so well praised is because for a lot of people it was their first. In the way that I first played Final Fantasy IV, and I recognize that story is pretty goddamn boring. It's a nothing burger. 6, on the other hand, I will still go to this day about, but I also can back that up. 7, I've had arguments with people where they try to tell me that it's one of the best ever, and I try to make them argue it, and like, they can't tell. Like, I always say, guys, the second they leave Midgar, it goes from like a 9 out of 10 to a 6. In my opinion, the story dies after Midgar because it starts getting weird, it starts getting confusing. And don't get me wrong, I like weird. It's not the good kind of weird. And it just kind of goes into a direction that just ends up being too far off the deep end, that it just stops being interesting. Because the whole, like, saving the planet against a diabolical, like, anti-environmental or corporate organization was really cool. And again, playing the remake really solidified that for me. And again, as soon as we left Midgar, it started to show its weaknesses again. Now it's definitely better. I will say that the time that I did spend with Rebirth, a lot of the stuff that isn't to do with the open world, I still enjoyed a lot. Barrett's side story, I enjoyed even more than I did the first time. Yuffie again has been a godsend. Like, I already liked Yuffie a lot in the original because I do like my wacky anime tropes, but like, she is incredible in this. And like, the more lighthearted nature that they took with a lot of things just really ended up working to its favor. But again, as soon as it crossed the line to when you start getting into the point that you know you're closing in on the temple of the ancients, it starts to show again that it's getting too weird. It's getting not anywhere near as interesting to me. And it may just be a me thing. And again, you know, I know a lot of people really like that game. I just don't agree with it. But when I see them say that they're going to bring a new happiness, I don't look at that as being things are going to be different and it's going to be a completely different ending. I think you're going to kind of get to sort of the same place with a bit of a spin, but I don't think they're going to do anything that makes me go, wow, they took a risk. And that's the part that I'm disappointed about, is I feel like now after Rebirth, the risk factor is gone because they wanted to stay safe, because they didn't want to piss off fans of the original, which again, guys, they weren't going to leave. No matter what you do, they were going to play it. So you should have just tried something different. Because honestly, Remake was one of the most interesting things I had played in a long time. Because it didn't stick to the narrative. It strayed from it. And furthermore, Square, by the way, also fuck you. Because you complained again that it didn't meet your sales expectations. So I get to remind you once again, maybe y'all need to lower your budgets and maybe project a little better, because it seems like you never hit your sales expectations. So, I don't know, maybe don't spend stupid amounts of money on a graphics engine that quite frankly isn't as necessary. And maybe in the case of Rebirth, maybe you shouldn't have spent so much on this massive open world that honestly fucking sucked. I'll say it. If you guys want to argue that to me, I will handle that in the comments. There is no one that can tell me that the open world was good. It was so boring. I hated myself for finishing that. But I had to because I thought there might be something towards the end that was worth it. And there wasn't. But anyways, I will let that go to you guys in the comments below. What do you think about the way that the direction of the Final Fantasy VII Remake has gone? And of course, hey, y'all want to take a shot at me? Y'all want to complain? Y'all want to, argue that I'm completely off base on this, that I'm completely wrong? Hey, that's what a comment section is for, and I'm always happy to talk with you guys there. So let me know everything you think in the comments below. So thank you so much for checking out this episode of Recap with Radical. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Share with all your friends, whether you can give it a rating as well, or like it, comment, all that stuff if you're listening on audio platforms, Apple, Google, Stitcher, wherever you get them. Keep in mind, we also have our link tree, linktr.ee/pixelplaypodcast, link to our socials, link to our Discord. Keep it coming. We always like talking with more people there. We got a couple of new members coming in. Once in a blue moon, it's nice to have more people there. We want to see more voices in there. Also, keep in mind, we are getting closer and closer to 250 subs. I want to remind people, we told the people that we were going to do it, and we're still committing to it. We're going to just have a random-ass bonus episode where we talk about serials from our childhood if we get to 250, and we are so bloody close to that. So subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you're sharing with all your friends who would be interested in this sort of content. But that's going to do it for this episode. Keep in mind, main shows go up on Wednesday. SideQuest goes up on Fridays. These are always going to be posted on Mondays, where we take a look at the stories from the previous podcast that we didn't cover. So with that being said, everybody, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.